Just get paid. I want to play. The vibes is right. I wanna hug up tight. No time to waste. I wanna work my ways. So come on, babes. Give me a taste. I wanna rub my body on your body. I wanna rub my body on your body. Let me rub my body on your body. I wanna rub my body on your body. I wanna rub and love up. I wanna rub and kiss up. I wanna rub and jam up. I wanna rub and rub up. I wanna rub my body on your body. I wanna rub my body on your body. Let me rub my body on your body. I wanna rub my body on your body. Pulling on. I'm feeling.
If you are looking to have your statutory declaration, affidavit of income, identity, damage or lost passport, lost license, tenancy agreement, agreement of settlement, power of attorney, last will and testament, and certification of documents, then you need to visit the Alistair Collins firm, located at the Killian Mall, 162 Lamaha Street in Georgetown, between Camp and Waterloo Street. Alistair Collins is a commissioner of oaths and a justice of the peace. Make certain you visit him or call for more information at 649-6410 or 685-6448 or 503-1451. And there's adequate parking available. Go down to the Alistair Collins firm and have all of your legal issues settled and brought to the fore. Alistair Collins Firm. Contact them at Alistair Collins Firm.
That little ditty we used to torment our teachers with when we were kids goes something like this. Onward, upward, Mary had a go. Day by day she tied it to a rope, till at length they got busty rope, and Miss Mary had to run behind it. We had a lot of fun with that, but Do you actually know how beautiful these words are? Here's the Song of Guyana's Children by W. Hawley Bryant. Born in the land of the mighty Roraima, land of great rivers and far-stretching sea, so like the mountains, the sea, and the river, great, wide, and deep in our lives would we be. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by day in strength and beauty grow, till at length we each of us may show what Guyana's sons and daughters can be. Born in the land of Kaijur, shining splendor, land of the palm tree, the croton and fern, we would possess all the virtues and graces, we all the glory of goodness would learn. Onward, upward, may we ever go, day by.
All right. Hey, guess what? Good evening. My name is Mark Benshop. We're going to rock and roll this evening for 1 hour straight. Guess what? We have with us this evening two gentlemen who are no strangers to you. Absolutely none. They are fighters. They are on the ground. Oftentimes, and one of them is based there full-time. Fighters. I consider them to be real fighters in the struggle against an oppressive PPP regime. They have been there in the past as fighters. They are still there. They are still here as fighters. They are no strangers, like I've said. Veteran trade unionist Lincoln Lewis. He's here with us this evening. And guess who else? The man from Buxton, Dr. David Hines. He is with us this evening. So do spread the word, share the link, and let folks know that we are going to have, as we say in Guyana, a bang-on discussion. But before we bring them on, let me just welcome all of you this evening. And guess what? We've been hearing some things. People believe that receiving a piece of paper, a proclamation from people who obviously don't know the real PPP, the real deal about the PPP, about their corruption, about their racism, and all these different things. And they believe that a little piece of paper of proclamation to basically brainwash people, and you guys know exactly who I'm talking about, right? Yeah, I'm talking about Barrett Jackdale. He flew with his friends then, including the U.S. ambassador, Sarah Ann Lynch. They were all there in Texas, pretending to seeking business for Guyana. And so in the process, they have decided to get together, probably lied to some of those representatives out there in Texas, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, and others. And so they were able to quickly, and look, you gotta give these political hustlers some sort of little thumbs up. They are political hustlers. And so whilst in Texas, as predicted, and I think on this show, I kind of told you guys that that's exactly what was going to happen, right? Because you've got to know your political opponents. You've got to know exactly how they think and how they will react to things. So whilst in Texas, they got Shirley Jackson Lee, the congresswoman out there who doesn't know what is happening in Guyana in terms of sufferation, in terms of racism, and these things. And so they were able to whisper in Miss Jackson Lee's ears, Congresswoman Jackson Lee's ears, and able to convince her to give them a proclamation, to give Jack Dale a piece of paper, pretending as though Jack Dale is such a wonderful person and that someone who really and truly believes in democracy. under his tenure, there were scores of persons who were murdered. There were ambassadors who were threatened, whose lives were threatened, and their families' lives were threatened by drug lords who were very close to the PPP regime. There were phantom squads, there were death squads, there were ministers of the PPP under Jack Deer's presidency that were linked to phantom squads, to death squads that were actually killing people left, right, and center in that country. But yet, there it is that you have Jackson, Congresswoman Jackson Lee, right? Shaking his hands and giving him a piece of paper. I don't know who staged that event, but it happened, right? But I'm just giving you, reminding you folks of what really transpired in Guyana, right, under Jack Deer's presidency. But then again, you know, these are people when they are confronted, they like to pretend as though they're angels. And this brings me into what Congressman Hakeem Jeffries said recently about them, which is nothing but the truth. And so they are basically cornered, they are shamed. But then again, in some respects, or most respects, they have no shame. And so whilst in Texas, they decided to just stage these events, probably got someone to whisper into those congressmen and congresswomen's ears, and a proclamation was issued. Now, they are going to be out sometime this weekend in Florida. Expect the same thing. Expect them to stage events with these individuals, these elected officials, in order to brainwash people back in Guyana and people outside of Guyana to give the impression that all things are hunky-dory back in that beautiful country, when in fact things are not hunky-dory. They are far from being that. But then again, read between the lines and understand the brainwashing nature of the PPP regime, the installed PPP regime. Now, before we get to our guest, this brings me to the opposition. The opposition seems to be left, right, all over. Sometimes you don't even know where they are. And this is a constructive criticism and a direct message to the leadership of the coalition. It is time that all of you, and when I mean all of you, I really do mean all of you, get your act together. Control your support base, get your members of parliament back together, because it appears as though a lot of them are lost and they're looking for leadership. And in that process, they can very well be, and I repeat, I want to say this, they can very well be misguided. And so in the end, who lose out of this whole process is the support base of the coalition. And so the leadership needs to have almost immediately an emergency meeting with all of the leaders who are willing to put their differences aside and sit down and ask and discuss, where do they go from there? How can they stand up and represent their people, their support base, and by extension, all Guyanese at this point in time? Leadership is absent. And when leadership is absent, others will step in. And when others step in, sometimes good comes out of it, and sometimes chaos comes out of it. And so I hope very soon the leadership of the coalition will get their act together. Now, Jack Deere and his cohorts them visited Texas, and then all sorts of things they have said. But we're not hearing a proper response from the legitimate opposition out in Guyana. We're not hearing that they are going to swiftly send a message to Congressman Shirley Jackson Lee to say that, hey, you've got to listen to us. You've got to listen to the guys them in the opposition. And now when I say opposition, I mean legitimate opposition. In Guyana, the opposition leader, the leader of the PNCR, the leadership of the AFC. Well, those are the parties that I can say, and even to some extent, the leadership of the WPA. They have to respond, and swiftly, to these things of or by the installed PPP regime. Thank you all for sharing the link. But here's what, before we get to our guest. Let me point out Anil Nandalal. Oh yeah, you all know Anil Nandalal. He has met today because he sent out a press release that he met with law enforcement agency of the United States of America, the U.S. Marshals, and other law enforcement offices, U.S. law enforcement offices. Fair enough. If they are in government or installed or whatever, and they want to meet with these guys because of mutual interest, sure. But those law enforcement offices should remember that it was under the PPPC regime, and I do believe it was one of the most wanted fugitive, right? A terrorist linked to Al Qaeda by the name of Al-Juman, I believe. He was in Guyana. He was being sheltered by the PPPC regime. And I hope Anil Nandalal took the time to remind them of that and to remind them that under his PPP government, that scores of persons were slaughtered by drug lords and phantom squads and death squads through extrajudicial killings by corrupt members and murderous members of the Guyana police force. All these things and more. I wish that he would have mentioned that. But here is where the opposition comes in, that they should also request a meeting or write to the heads of those agencies in the U.S., those law enforcement agencies, reminding them about what transpired even while this guy was Attorney General. Lots of things happen. Look at this. Death threats against Kaitor News by Minister Anil Nandalal. This is a report out in the Kaitor News, November 2nd, 2014. Anil Nandalal plan designed to shut down the newspaper. There were emails that actually spoke of the plot against Kaitor News. And we can go on. The threats, Nandalal repeats threats to Kaitor News. Again, it was a shivering message. All of these things and more. Recorded threats against Kaitor News. Legal fraternity calls. He claims that it was a private conversation. So all of these things and more. Look at this. Even a member of parliament of the Kaitor News said, the PPP said, Nandalal was uncouth, obnoxious, and offensive. PPP member of parliament. These are things that Nandalal should have said to those U.S. law enforcement officers that he met with. Or the opposition should take the time out to inform those officers or the heads of those agencies about what transpired when Nandalal was the Attorney General. And look, about the law books. He was charged indictably with stealing law books, law reports. He was placed on self-bail. Lots of these things, we can go on and on and on. This was in a newspaper out in Barbados, recording of Guyana's Attorney General Anil Nandalal. And again, we can go on and on and on. And look at this here. Guyana activists killed. And you all remember this guy. Oh yeah, look at him. Courtney Crummy Wing, standing there in front of Anil's office at the Attorney General's chambers. That is after all those threats to Kaitor News in a recorded conversation was actually aired. And so Courtney Crummy Wing went out in front there to say enough is enough. And you all know what happened, right? Courtney Crummy Wing was murdered. He was assassinated. And it was Anil Nandalal who was also one of the many persons who were questioned. And now this is still hanging over his head. I don't know. For some reason, maybe he should have explained that to those law enforcement officers that he met with. Look at this headline in Virgin Islands, News Online. Attorney General's voice, aware of a plot to launch an armed attack on Kaitor News. armed attack on Kaichor News. And now guess what? These are the people who are complaining. And what is interesting is that at the end of that meeting, at the end of the press release, Anil Nandalal said that he took the time to discuss with those U.S. law enforcement officers that they should pay attention to individuals who reside in the U.S. that are causing, through their programs or utterances, they're instigating racial incitement in Guyana. But look at who is talking about racial incitement. Look at these folks. Look at the evidence and all of these things. And that is why I'm saying that the opposition, the main opposition party, should continue. They should swiftly counter these things. But it seems as though they're sleeping for the most part. Bring this up. Look at what the PPP supporters did to an AFC vehicle that almost cost those persons their lives out there in Bat Settlement or Bushlat or wherever that happened. All of these things should be brought to their attention. But before we go to our guest, Lincoln Lewis and Dr. David Hines, they're here with us. And I thank those gentlemen for being patient with me, right? But look at it. That same guy, Anil Nandalal, went in to, I believe, somewhere out there on the west coast of Berbice, when Lincoln Lewis was fighting for lands that belonged to them, Lincoln Lewis generation. Anil Nandalal stepped into that area and urged individuals to go and illegally seize Lincoln Lewis family's land. And now, the question is, who the heck are these guys fooling? Who can they bluff? And when they sit there with these people, I wonder, because obviously those people know them, but I wonder who they think they are fooling. Opposition, wake up. Those leadership in Guyana, the opposition, wake up. Take control of your parties, take control of your support base, take control of your members of parliament. That's all I wish to say. Let's go to our guest, David Hines and Lincoln Lewis. First on the screen is Lincoln Lewis. Second on the screen is Dr. David Hines. I deliberately didn't mention as yet the nonsense and the racist article by Freddie Kissoon in today's Kaichor News. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Mark.
Good evening, Lincoln.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah.
David, how are you? Welcome, my brother.
Yeah, good. Welcome, gentlemen, to this show. Let's begin by first, let's talk with the veteran trade unionist who is in Guyana. He's always in Guyana, and that's why I give him kudos for always being there on the ground. Lincoln, let's begin with this this thing about the installed regime is saying to our soldiers, the soldiers of the Guyana Defense Force, that unless they're vaccinated, they're not going to be paid. Let's begin with that. Your take.
You know, Mark, let me say to you that I don't understand the messages that are being sent by this government. There's an order that has been issued by the minister, which speaks to the question of, which speaks to the issue of vaccination. And while they're pursuing vaccination, there are caveats to the whole the entire order, which speaks to a number of things that ought to be, if you have underlying conditions and what have you, you will be exempted. I'm interpreting from the order that if you don't want to take the vaccination, what you need to do is to provide what we call a test every 14 days. And more so, what I'm seeing from what struck me with the Army's position is that they are virtually saying to you that if you must go and you must pay for that vaccine, pay for the test. And if you don't have those things, you will not be paid. The issue here is that what they have done, they have really brought it now. They have made it a part of the workplace requirement. When these men joined the army, that was not the requirement. They are now imposing new requirements on them. And since these are new requirements, and we are in what we call a national pandemic, we are embracing a program which call for universal vaccination and what have you. Whatever happens within that period, it has to be free. The state has to take care of the expenses. But any employer, private employer, who says to you that you will have to go take a PCR test and you have to pay for it, it now comes under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And since they are required that under under those circumstances, they will have to pay for them. The point is that these guys are playing with fire. They are making people what they ought not to be. I believe that they should rethink their position and pay these people. They should engage these people and talk with them. They should make sure that whatever they do are within the confines of the law. And the question here also is that you respect the people's freedom of choice on this occasion. You know,
Well said. Yeah.
I was talking to an individual today, a political individual, and he was saying to me that, look, well, I have taken the vaccine. I have a right. He has taken the vaccine, and since he has taken the vaccine, then the people who are saying that you must respect their right, he's saying that they must respect his right too. You know what is happening here is that there is not a coming of minds as to how we can come and embrace a common position in this country. Everybody, politicians in this country, believe that they can make decisions and impose it on people. That time has passed. The Constitution do not give them the right. The spirit and intent of this Constitution not giving them the right to do the things they are doing.
All right. On that note, you are correct.
The Constitution that we have had before, that Constitution speaks about participation. This Constitution speaks about involvement. And the spirit and intent of that should be respected at all times.
On that note,
Thank you, Mark.
thank you. Thank you, Lincoln. Lois, should be respected at all times. Dr. David Hines, thank you for your time this evening, man. I'll ask you the same question before we move on to other questions. The Guyana Defense Force officers have to be vaccinated before they receive pay. Your take, sir.
Yeah. But what we're witnessing is the consequence of the mismanagement of the corona COVID-19 pandemic in Guyana by the PPP government. All these mandates are consequences of that mismanagement. Let me get a couple of things out of the way first. We are in the face of a pandemic. Whatever we think about the science around it, we are in the face of a pandemic that threatens to devour this world. And when you're in the face of a pandemic of that magnitude, government has a responsibility to act to save every single citizen in the country. That's the second thing I want to say. because we are human beings and because we do politics, whenever we have a pandemic, we are then challenged between the imperatives of the pandemic and the nature of our politics. The imperatives of the pandemic and the nature of our politics. What does that mean for a Guyana? The imperatives of the pandemic means that all hands have to be on deck because we are dealing with a matter that is greater than us as individuals, communities, as countries. And so it means is that every single power agency in the society has to come on board, whether it be the government, the opposition, the trade unions, the nurses, the minibus drivers. All of these entities are affected. So it means that they have to come on board. But we live in a society with a divisive politics. So we have a situation that requires unity. But our politics is inherently divided. So for a country like Guyana, we start the pandemic at a disadvantage. Because stopping a pandemic, like I said, means closing of ranks. Now, there always in any society, when you say something like a vaccine, once you give people the choice, some people, regardless of who is in government, regardless of what, they will not take that vaccine once you give them the choice. Secondly, there are those who are going to take it for all kinds of safety reasons. And then you have in the middle some people who are going to take it on condition. So you're not going to get on the ground once you give choice. Guyana is the English-speaking Caribbean is the most vaccinated region in the world. We never had problems. Right? You wait, your baby born, you took them for tetanus, you do nothing. Once you say you are giving people choice, you are going to have people who are automatically going to resist because it's government. Government always lords it over people. So when people get a choice to say no, they will say no. These same people were taking vaccines all in Guyana. 15, 20 vaccines be taking that place since 2 months old. No trouble.
And the fact, Dr. Hines, that the military guys now are being forced to take the vaccine because the government is forcing them to take the vaccine. You're of the view that they should. What should they do now?
No, well, I'm coming to that, Mark. I'm coming to that. Like I said, this order to the police and the military and all these government workers, these are consequences. No, if you are faced with a pandemic, you want to bring in a divided society all shades of opinion to be represented in the task force. The first error we made is not having the government, the opposition, civil society, that includes trade unions, the churches, everybody in that task force. Because you are dealing with a divided society. So if you want to bring a society together to help to deal with this pandemic, you first of all need an all-inclusive task force. Because you are trying to get people to do something that they would not normally do if they do it. So therefore, you are in East Indian-based government in a society that's divided along ethnic lines. You are telling a set of Black people who didn't vote for you, who don't feel should go for it, that they should go and take a lead. Tell you no. And if you know politics, you should know they will tell you no. You should also know the people who vote for you only taking it because you tell them to take it. So you have a chance to tell your constituencies what to do, but you deny the opposition the chance to talk to their constituency. Because the opposition is not in the task force. And it's the opposition who have to talk to opposition supporters on this matter. It's Black people who have to talk to Black people. Black leaders who have to talk to black people. The East Indian government is not going to get them to take the vaccine. So the government first by deciding we are the government, so we're going to direct this thing on our own. That's one. Two, once you are dealing with something that is strange and unknown, in an era where you have all kinds of information out there, you can go on the internet on a given day, you see 100 different views, 1,000 different views on the pandemic, on the vaccine. It's therefore that as a government, you need to educate people. And like I said, education has to be done by who the people trust. And so therefore, you have to do extensive education. That's the second thing. The third thing, you have to give people options. You can't take Sputnik because that's your choice. Because you want to go beg, and they give you Sputnik and bring and tell the people, take Sputnik. They're not going to take it. So here is the third way in which they err. They have money sitting down in New York, oil money in a bank, almost $500 million. Take some of that money and buy vaccines that people are likely to be confident with. I talked to people while I was in Ghana for 10 weeks. And a lot of people say, if you bring Moderna and Pfizer, we're going to take it. We might take the AstraZeneca, but we're not taking Sputnik.
Dr. Hines, not to cut into you, but we have a bunch of other questions we want to ask, and I understand we can go on and on with this. We got your point about the army and so forth, and again, I apologize for cutting into you, but we do have a lot of things we want to talk, Doc, this evening. One of the things we also, and again, your point is well taken on this forced vaccination. This guy, Hakeem Jeffries, this is the hot topic right now. What Congressman Hakeem Jeffries said at a rally in Brooklyn, basically painting the regime out in Guyana, the installed regime, as being indiscriminatory, racist, etc., against persons of African descent. Now let's go straight to Lincoln to get a first bite at this. What the congressman said and the response coming from Mark Phillips. Gentlemen, please, I know we are basically looking at the time, but please get straight to the point. You know I don't usually do that, but go ahead, Mr. Lincoln Lewis.
Well, we are straight up, you know.
Go ahead, sir.
Let me tell you what. I've been one of the persons that accused the PPP sometime back for economic genocide in the African community. We're committing that. And the evidence has always been there. What the PPP did is to touch the reset button, and they come back again, and the same things they are doing. Let me show you this. I'm not impressed at any point with the responses that I see coming from Mark Phillips, Brigadier Mark Phillips, who held a similar position like Colin Powell in the United States.
But Colin Powell was a 5-star general.
Chairman of the Joint Chief of Staff.
Yeah.
Right? Let me tell you something. What the PPP, look at how the PPP behave. They take the black man and they put him to break up the police force to deal with the people there. Even if you break up, put ropes and bend, they're breaking it up. They take, what's his name? Todd, and they put him at Foreign Affairs where you get black people again to break it up, move them around, transfer them. And then they take Phillips and they give Phillips the job to go and lie for them. They put a black face to go and lie for them. The PPP know this game well. And rather than these guys observing what is taking place and seek to stay far and advocate for the empowerment of the communities that they come from, they will be gophers. Let me go further to tell you this. The Constitution says that the Prime Minister is number 2 in the government. But Phillips is contented to take the place of number 3, with Jack Dio either at number 1 or number 2, either he or Fun, based on the issue, who will be 1 and who will be 2 at that time. But he just satisfied being at number 3. The man is worse than Sam Hines. Sam Hines, he was always the number 2. While he may be smiling all the time, even going to the bank, but he has not relinquished that responsibility. This man is pathetic. The congressman will have to be, would have had to be briefed. And I don't believe that the congressman is going to come out and make statements without the evidence in front of him. And let me say further, we need to commend Burke for pulling that rally off. He and the team that were there. Let me tell you, what you see, the first man that run out the crease was Phillips. What we are seeing here is that they have started to use the black faces to do their biddings. It is not by accident that the lady with the cornrow, they are engaging her. The PPP is good at this. They didn't show the world that black people are with them. While behind the scene, they are involved in mischief, like taking away people's land. Discriminate against groups. We have had the floods. CDC described the floods in region 7 and 10, right, as worse than what you had in region 4 and 5. But the people in region 4 and 5 and 2 and 3 will get money. They will get the hog of the money, while they will allow some hampers to the people in 7 and 10. That is how the PPP behave. When it's big money too, they will go, they will put people of their kind to go to give it. When it's hampers, they put the black faces to once deliver it. We have to understand that what the congressman said must be the beginning of what we are, of a march that will be long and rigorous. This is the start of something, and the opposition and all forces need to get the message out to the world. We cannot allow it to happen like how it happened in 1992. When it started in 1992, there are many persons who said, give them a chance. And we have seen, giving a chance, what we have seen. Many lives went. Many people were pauperized. Many people from the African community were pauperized. We have to stop it now. We have to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lincoln Lewis. We go to David Hines. You get a bite of this. Congressman Jeffries, who has been there since 2013. Prior to that, he was an assemblyman out there in Brooklyn. a qualified lawyer, went to a prestigious law school, New York Law School. He went to Georgetown University and other, I think one other university out where a legitimate university. So here's a guy with credibility, lots and lots of credibility, a strong leader, head of the Democratic caucus, I believe, out there in Congress, and all these leadership roles he has played. There hasn't been any controversy about the guy, but we will get into that, what one local commentator out there in Guyana had to say, disparaging remarks about that honorable, respectable congressman from Brooklyn. But your take on what he said in describing the PPP and Mark Phillips and the PPP's response, swift response. Your take, Dr. Hines.
Congressman Jeffries hit the PPP where they are most vulnerable on the question of racial discrimination. Congressman Jeffries said what a lot of Black leaders are fearful of saying in their own country. So you have here, the PPP practices racism, and the opposition leaders, the Black leaders, do not like to talk about race. So the PPP gets away. Whenever the Ben Shops, the Eric Phillips, the Lincoln Lewis, the David Hines, a handful of us, tell them they're racist, they call we racist and dismiss us. And some of our own people say, yes, I'm the racist. And the PPP gets away. But Hakeem Jeffries is a top US congressman. He's chairman of the Democratic caucus. He comes with a lot of power, and he puts his name and his face behind and PPP's racism and say, you're racist, stop it. And the PPP knows that they're exposed to the world. What the congressman said is what those of us who they call racist, me, Lincoln, you, all we, is what we have always been saying. But we have a big international ally who's saying it. And the PPP doesn't like that. Because a racist don't let you call them racist. They call you racist so that they can get away with racism undetected. The back is no joy. I told a certain friend of ours some time ago, before the election, I said, if there's an installed regime, that people are discriminated, the Black caucus is not going to stand by and allow that. And he told me I'm a crazy man, that the Black caucus will stand the status quo. And when some members of the Black caucus last year went down to Guyana and sided with the PPP, they were rejoicing. Now you have another member of the Black caucus, this time one of them with power, telling them they're racist. They begin to cry. That's what they're doing. Putting Mark Phillips cry. Let them cry. Because they're damn racist and the world must know that. God bless Congressman Hakeem Jeffries.
Thank you so much. And you are correct, Dr. David Hines, that what the Honorable Congressman has said is what a lot of people in Guyana know, what they have experienced. Lincoln mentioned earlier in his introduction that he coined the term economic genocide in Guyana under the PPP. We all know that. That is a fact. These PPP vagabonds cannot run away from facts. The evidence is there. It is quite clear. And so what they're doing is playing the propaganda game behind the scene by pushing up these puppets like a Mark Phillips and others to show to those guys, maybe Sheila or Shirley Jackson, the congresswoman out there in Texas, that they're not racist. But the evidence is clear that they are racist. Look at the 3,000 plus mainly persons of African descent, that they sent home since August 2nd, 2020 last year. Look at the way they're persecuting persons of African descent, taking away their lands and so forth and so on. I don't know. Let's go to Lincoln Lewis. We just mentioned, and we see a comment there by Leroy Nelson. And thank you, Leroy, for that reminder. Congressman Jeffries is likely to become the next Speaker of the House, the same position that Nancy Pelosi holds now. The next Speaker of the House could possibly be Congressman Henry Jeffries. Yet, Lincoln Lewis, in Freddie Kissoon's article today, he basically painted a picture of Hakeem Jeffries as though he is not human. I don't know what has happened to Freddie Kissoon, but let me have you, Mr. Lincoln Lewis, to take a bite at that article and that nonsense and that disrespectful and that racist article coming from Freddie Kissoon. Your take, Mr. Lewis.
You know, Mark, there are times you pity some people. This is one of the times I pity that guy. All these guys, they do is that anybody who raises their voices against the PPP government, is that you see them as racist. Anybody who question anything that they do, one need to take the congressman has been elected by his constituents, not because of how we look, but because he has delivered for them. When some people who are criticizing everybody who are elected to some position, one need to ask on whose behalf they're speaking. It got to be on their behalf. Well, let me say to you that we must take all these guys as serious as possible. They are not for justice and fair play. Justice and fair play is selective for them. We have to understand that what exists in Guyana it's a battle for dominance or domination by a group of people who want to become the new massa. So when they attack Jeffries, they're attacking Jeffries because he may be looking like the people whose rights are being transgressed. Let me give you an example. What they should be talking about is that they're going to be giving work permit and what have you to 2,000 plus Venezuelans. But the Haitians who have blazed the trail have made it possible for all of us, after they have fought slavery, they have done that. They are members of CARICOM. We're telling them that regardless of their plight, economic plight in Haiti, regardless of the circumstances there, if they want to come to Guyana, they must get a visa. But when Barbados begin to question the intent of a specific group from Guyana going to Barbados, on the grounds that they were not capitalizing but violating the free movement laws and conventions, it is the same PPP government that came out in defense of them and argue, even attacking the Barbados government, accusing them of xenophobia. Why we doing this to the Asians? Because they look different to the Venezuelans and the Brazilians and so forth that are coming here? Is it so? Let us ask the question. Let us seek out the answers. And you tell me they're saying that they're not racist? They're damn well racist. They're practicing it, even in their immigration policies and programs. We have to be damn well careful. And let the same people who condemn what Congressman Jeffries said, let them look and examine this that is right in their backyard, right in their home, each day as we traverse the streets, byways, and alleyways in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Lincoln. Dr. David Hines, all three of us right here, we sat with Freddie Kissoon. We ate, we drank, Marby and whatever else with Freddie, and all sort of things we did. All sort of things we sat down and we thought we were sitting as friends, as brothers in the struggle and so forth. Does it at all make you uncomfortable to read the sort of things Freddie Kissoon is now writing and is now painting individuals who have the same views that we've had when he came around us, smiled with us, pretending that we're friends, but now he's describing us as racist. When we held the same views, he embraced us. He pretended that he supported our views then. Let me stop talking. Your take, Dr. Hines.
Yes, either Freddie did an excellent job at fooling many of his friends and a lot of Black people, frankly, including myself, that he was not a racist. He fooled us. He clearly has racist tendencies, but he was able to hide them. And either that or Freddie's being paid some enormous amount of money to write the things he's writing, or both. And I rather suspect, as I said, I don't believe Freddie's a racist. I now have to rethink about that and to revise that, but I know he is in bed and he's working at the behest of racists. All right, so I've gone past Freddie. The significance of what Freddie has written ought to wake us up as Black people. Because even if one were to say Freddie's not racist, and there are lots of Indians who I would not consider racist, they close ranks around this government. And you have to ask the question, why moderate Indians close ranks around the most degraded Indian leadership? These are Indians who walked away from Cheddi Jagan, but are prepared to close ranks around Bara Jagdeo. You ask yourself, what is it that's driving that? Freddie walked away from Jagan, but he's now singing the praises of Jagdeo. What is going on? And you have to conclude that we are in a life and death situation in Guyana, where this political system says it's either man govern an oil-rich country or the Indian man or woman govern an oil-rich country? And when it comes to answering that fundamental question, moderate Indians have decided that we go in with the Indian man no matter how bad he is. Because fundamentally, we do not believe black people have a right to govern. But more than that, the black people have the capacity to govern our economics and politics. That's where Freddie's coming from. That's where a lot of moderate Indians who have now gone home to the PPP, those who left Dragon, have now gone back to attack the old PPP because they don't feel that people like you and me and Lincoln have the capacity and the right to govern a Guyana that's going to become one of the richest countries in the world. And who is that? Black boy from America who dared to stand up and talk to them. If that comment had come from a white congressman, the PPP would have behaved differently. But it comes from a black congressman. And they're saying he does not have the capacity to talk to us because fundamentally he's inferior to us. We're seeing racism at its worst because racism is the belief that your race is superior to other races, or put another way, other races are superior to you. So Freddie doesn't have to say Indians are superior. All you have to do is what he does every day is to say black people are inferior. And that is the essence of racism. And you see racism at its worst when it comes to wealth. Because wealth is what determines power. And when it comes to wealth, Indians of all shades of opinion, all ideological persuasion, decided to close ranks behind the worst Indian government or the worst Indian leaders in the history of Guyana. They say no more.
You know, part of what he said, and not spending much more time on that, is that he's urging people to go and protest in front of the Honorable Congressman Hakeem Jeffries' office. This is so ridiculous in terms of reading, and I saw the hatred there, the venom in which he wrote, or whoever wrote that letter for that article for him. It is disgraceful. Here's a man, Freddie Kissoon, putting up a monument of the current U.S. ambassador there in Guyana and worshiping her for God in heaven knows what. Here's a man
because white people are superior. He's not going to put up a bus for a black man, Hakeem Jeffries, because he's inferior.
You know, here's a man who basically has ignored all of the evidence pointing to elections, fraudulent elections and votes and all these things, especially in an area where his friend Anil Nandalal was supervising. Thousands, almost 12,000 votes are questionable out there, where Anil Nandalal was supervising, I believe he was, mind you, on the east coast of Demerara, and other questionable actions. He seemed to ignore them. I don't know. But Freddie Kissoon, I recall once when he and I were at Brickdam, he actually cried and he said that he's done with the struggle, that he can't take this locking up. And I honestly do believe every day I scan through his article, I realize that he can't take the struggle at all.
Mark, you're giving out the man's secret. When we have held that secret for that man, Freddie, for decades, the man's a frightened man. The man goes home at 10 o'clock, don't where you go, you don't. He's a fright. For all he writes in that paper, he hides behind a pen. Be right. When we come out, he just face, but Freddie just run home. And I'm glad you bring it. So when you're ready for news, you're going to say Mark first and me second and Lincoln. The audience must know that man's a coward. Mark, like we lose Mark. I think we've lost Mark there. He's frozen on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the audience must know for all that stuff Freddie writes there. We know that Lincoln. The man used to go and buy tennis roll in Buxton. Since he started write foolishness about Quayana and Hines, he stopped going and buy tennis. He never go back. The Freddie go in Buxton. He's the biggest coward. What the things in WPA boys would say that he has a complex with the other WPA people. When was Rodney time? He was never wrong, you know. He was never wrong during the Rodney time. He was not wrong.
You know, Dr. Hines, I got kicked off.
It gives the world the impression that he was there.
No, he wasn't there. He coming to Canada. The man's a coward. And we have been keeping his secret forever.
I do agree with you, Dr. Hines, that he's a frightened man. He's really, really afraid. One of the things that he said during his time, his trouble, and he has had a lot of trouble. And I know, especially under the PPP, it's people like us. It is us who went to his rescue. It is us who he ran to. He wasn't describing us then as racist. He wasn't describing us then as anti-Indians. He knows that we have worked along in terms of exposing the ills of the PPP regime and human rights violation, workers' rights violations. It doesn't matter the ethnicity. We have all been there. He understands that. And when we finish doing what we're doing, we are the ones who have to escort him home all the time.
Before 10 o'clock.
We have some other things before 10, indeed. We have some other things that we want to talk about. The fact that Anil Nandalal now, in a release, he claims that in discussions with U.S. Law enforcement agency officers, that he has requested that they monitor shows like these. He didn't call names or whatever. And I find that to be very, very disturbing. Not that I'm afraid at all, but that here are law enforcement officers, U.S. law enforcement officers, and someone like Anil Nandalal. We already know his controversies, allegations of threats, and with all sorts of things in Guyana, questionable things in Guyana, allegations, right? He's sitting there with U.S. law enforcement officers and telling them to take a look at what these guys, meaning us, what we say on our platform. I hope he knows that that is breaking the law, the U.S. law, that he's basically saying to these persons to do his political biddings. But I want him to know that that is not how law enforcement operates in the United States of America. Your take on that, David? I see you're smiling before we get to Lincoln.
Yeah. No. What he's doing is trying to say we are causing trouble. That's what he's trying to signal to another government and to ask that government to act on behalf of them to say we are causing trouble. I don't know what trouble we are causing, but as Congressman Lewis, the late Lewis said, well, if you're causing good trouble, then your thing is we have to cause trouble to get out of slavery. We have to cause plenty trouble to get out of slavery. We have to cause plenty trouble to get out of colonialism and indentureship. And so therefore, we are not doing anything wrong. We do not have the monopoly of violence. We don't. I don't own a gun. I don't. The monopoly of violence is with the government instead. They have the police who they're bullying. They got the police who they're bullying now to go and take vaccine. They have the death squads and the phantom squads. They have the monopoly on power. What we are doing, we are using our voices, we are using our intellect in order to witness for our people, to organize our people, to educate our people, to bond with our people in defense of ourselves against the violence of the PPP. The PPP has blood on its hands, a lot of blood. political blood. Now they have economic blood on their hands. Brother Lincoln talked about economic genocide. When a woman wakes up in the morning and she doesn't have food to give her children, there's no worse violence than that. When a woman is pregnant, she can't get money that the government owe her to buy things to prepare for pregnancy. That's the worst kind of violence. So the PPP has economic blood on their hands, political blood on their hands, and they have the blood of the army and the police that they send into West Police and other places to shoot at black people. They have blood on their hands. All that we are doing is that we are defending our people with our minds, our voices, and our bodies in many cases against the violence. Let him tell the U.S. authorities that.
You know, the thing is, thank you, Dr. Hines, Mr. Lewis. The thing is that when the PPP says whatever they want to say, it is all well, it is okay. They have the monopoly on the truth, so it may appear on everything. So everything they say is okay, must be accepted. And that is their form of democracy. But when others now, opponents, political opponents, counter what they have to say, they are upset, they are vexed. Those individuals who counter what they say are being described as racist, troublemakers, inciters, all these sort of things. But those are the ones, the Anils and the Jagdeos and the Irfans, they are the ones, they have their friends, private security, waving big guns and all these things every single day. And people must shut up. Well, hey, I am not going to be one that's shut up. That's going to shut up. You are not, Dr. Hines. Lincoln Lewis is not. We are not going to shut our mouths. Lincoln, Anil complaining to law enforcement agencies in the U.S. like a little wimp. Your take on that, Lincoln?
Anil is doing what the PPP knows best. Is to lie to people. The greatest strength of the PPP ministers and so forth is that they have no damn shame. They are the people who are guilty of something, but they're accusing everybody else of being guilty and they're being innocent. Let me tell you what. You don't have to be a political opponent of the PPP. Any man or woman that expresses an alternative opinion to what Jagdeo and the Buccaneers say, they adopt them as a PNC or an APNU or AFC. You're in your man and tell them that at times they're telling the AFC and at times they're telling you're PNC. What they're good at is labels. Rather than take it for what it is, examine the situation, and see how I can do better in governance. Look, they gave $25,000 for the COVID-19 grant. Then they come and they're giving now to pensioners some other $25,000. You know what they're doing there? They're using this money as some way to buy respectability and support. But when they finish, if they give it, if it's 30 million, if it's 30 million, you make sure in a community that 8 go to the people and the rest go on to their friends. It's a new way. It's a new way of establishing slush funds. These are the type of things they should be discussing when they go to the foreign powers. You know where they're gone? Nobody, David, you know this, that the PPP was more anti-American than any other political party in this country.
And around the Caribbean.
But to control the wealth of the country, They join with the Americans now, business community, to make sure that they get a hug of it. And not only in this case here that black people is cut out with, the African people are cut out of it. Their supporters are going to end up getting trinkets too. They will help some of them, but the majority of them will get trinkets. Let me say to you,
Lincoln, before you say something, Lincoln, quickly, just a quick second. You mentioned
because you don't have shame.
Yeah.
Huh?
You mentioned the fact
because
that
you don't have shame.
Yeah.
He will go to those people. He will go to the American people, the security people, and he will lie to them. They are good at it. They can cry. They can cry good. You see the thing about it, I'm said to you that these guys don't have any damn shame. You and me get it. We know that if we lie and the lie come back to face us, we're going to be ashamed. They don't have shame. You got to understand. These people, this man here, tell the people to go and break down the fence that we have constructed around our family land and tell them to take it. And he has not stopped there. He has gone to other agencies, state agencies, trying to get them to take the land. Or he can tell me, in God's good name, he can go to the Americans and tell them that people creating racial strife here. The people we sent were primarily East Indians to break the fence. So what you're telling me? Who doing it? And he using state apparatus, you know. This man is the Attorney General of this country. And he's doing that. So how, in God's name, he can go and face anybody to tell them that these talk shows and these internet programs, these online programs, you're creating racial strife. He's creating it here. What is happening on this program is a counter to what he's doing. Let me tell you something. If you hadn't Ben Scott, the Borks them, Cam TV and others, and like Caliphis 101 that David doing. Let me tell you this, if we hadn't them, then a lot of things would not have gone out. This is what worrying them. They can't intensify the economic genocidal program that they do have as fast as they would have done it ordinarily in the absence of these programs, in absence of these platforms. Because these platforms, so what you're trying to do is to look at ways and means. I can't close them down, but I'm going to stick to them, I'm going to discredit them. And that's what that is his main motive. We got to fight back though. Time to stand up and be counted. That's it.
Thank you, Lincoln Lewis there. Let me just take the time out to say good evening to all law enforcement officers who are watching this program. Those hardworking law enforcement officers, honest and respectable law enforcement officers in Guyana, we still do have a lot of them there in the Guyana Police Force. But I'm not saying goodnight to those puppets, those political puppets and the stooges who are doing the biddings, the dirty biddings of the PPP in the Guyana Police Force. Let me also take opportunity to say good evening to U.S. law enforcement officers who always, I do believe, watch this show so that they can get the other side. And they are the law enforcement officers who understand that what we do here is still the other side of the coin, which is part of our constitutional rights here in the United States of America, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, et cetera, as outlined in what is it? Article First Amendment. Sorry,
The First Amendment.
the very thing that Anil Nandalal and his folks are denying Guyanese people freedom of expression, freedom of an opinion that is different from those in the installed PPP regime. But however, those law enforcement officers that he met with, I am sure that they are aware that Anil cannot dictate to them to monitor and to police people on social media. That is not part of their jurisdiction. It is not part of their jobs. And so what the coalition should do, the opposition should do, is to swiftly write to the heads of those agencies and let them hear, let them see exactly what Anil Nandalal has presented to the public. It is dangerous, but nobody's afraid. It is dangerous, Anil. Go ahead, Lincoln.
Mark, let me tell you what. The man is somewhat clever. The man is saying what he said. He's not saying to this country or to the world what they have said to him. In fact, what he did is going there begging them to monitor us and to seek ways and means how they can stop us from operating.
Not possible.
He should be ashamed.
Not possible. Here's why he did that.
No, what he's doing there, the man is saying that, the man is saying what he did, you know. Is he going to ask them? He going to tell them? And in fact, what he's doing is subtly asking them to do something about it. Right?
This
thing here, Mark, it worries them. You see that 10,000 people that the NYPD said that were in that march the other day? It worries these guys. And it's ways and means they're fighting to it back. They're they're developing a program. While it may be disjointed now, they are trying to get their feet, get their bearing together that it can move on it.
It is not
what they're doing. They're gone there now. They're gone there. It's sympathy they're looking for.
It happens.
This is how these guys behave.
But remember,
yes. What I'm happy about, that all of that happened in the United States, and it is not in Guyana that they believe that they are what they are. They are not beggars. They are kings and queens and lords. You remember that statement?
Oh yeah.
We are not beggars. We came here.
One of the things, Lincoln, and this is directed to a couple of our listeners respectfully. One of the things that we've got to learn is we oftentimes say, oh, ignore Anil or ignore what Freddie said. We do that. And when we do that, things come back to haunt us. We must be able to nip these things on the bud. Hear why Anil did what he did. And somebody, maybe somebody at the embassy that you're very close with decided that have this meeting, right, with U.S. Marshals, right? Even if you're having such a meeting with U.S. law enforcement officers, why do you want to make these things public? There are lots of fugitives who are in Guyana that are on the U.S. wanted list to be extradited to Guyana, to the U.S. They are friends. Some of them, I suspect, may be friends of Anil Nandalal, but they are friends of the PPP regime who the U.S. Marshals understand that every time they, under the PPP regime, that they want to extradite a drug lord or a money launderer or whatever, it is the PPP that defends these guys. So even if they met with U.S. law enforcement officers, why should this be revealed to the public with photographs of those U.S. law enforcement officers who are stationed in Guyana? It doesn't happen. Nowhere else you see these things happen. But Anil Nandalal used those U.S. law enforcement officers for his own benefit. For example, it was labeled all over that he was of interest to the New York Police Department, over a complaint made of harassing and threatening and so forth and so on. It has been hanging over his head for a while. So now that it seems as though, according to him and the guy in the police force, that the rope or whatever, the bangles are somewhat removed for now. Now, Burke might be arguing differently, right? But he might be arguing differently. But Anil Nandalal probably is breathing a breath of fresh air right now. So he wants the use the US law enforcement officers to say, look, Anil could talk with them. He's no longer wanted. He's no longer. That is exactly what that meeting was about. Let's move away from that guy for one moment. Let us move away from him. Let us get back to Dr. David Hines. Let us go in Texas. Bara Jagdev and others were there, including the U.S. ambassador to Guyana. They were all there in Texas talking about oil deals and all these different things, right? Making their deals. During that visit, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and another Congress representative issued to Bara Jagdev a proclamation, basically saying, you're a wonderful man. Take a bite of that propaganda, Dr. Hines.
Yeah. What you see there was the oil fraternity getting together and the PPP doing what they have done since they've come to power. And that is to tell all those potential, those people who potentially will question their governance. This is a man, look, we got money, come. Come, we don't get peace. Don't worry, them people, they ain't got nothing to give you all. You come and we don't give you. And that's what they've been doing in going around and buying friends around the world. And that's what they've been doing there. It means that our work is cut out. Somebody like Sheila Jackson Lee, who is someone who I admire and who is of Caribbean heritage. Her parents are Jamaicans. She's West Indian. And if there is any congresswoman who should take an interest in that region of the world, is Sheila Jackson Lee. And perhaps our staff has not done the kind of work that they need to do in order for her to become better informed. So what it means is that we have our work cut out. That is why we have to continue doing what we are doing here. What we are doing here is we are bringing together public opinion across the spectrum. For the first time, middle class people and lower class and high class Guyanese are ganging together on these shows. You see them, you can tell by the comments, some stooshy, some not so stooshy, some in between stooshy. But we're bringing together position, political opinion across the spectrum. And we are bringing together even East Indians who are aggrieved with the PPP onto these programs. So these programs become a mobilizing tool for the struggle against them at home. That is what they fear. It is Bertolt Brecht. Why do they fear the open word? Why do they fear the word? The open word is based on truth, that's on ability, that is based on intelligence, based on reason, is grounded in the history of a people who all centuries of enslavement to say, here we are, here we are as equal as you, and you want to run for you at all in box for you. You want us to protect the box for you. Leaves you when you are sleeping nights. You want us to guide your businesses, but you don't want us to spend money and govern Guyana. Here, we are going to do that. We are going to do that. And we are more there, and everywhere. And that's what they're going crying to the Americans. That's why they're fooling American Congress. But we can educate them on the truth.
All right. Thank you so much. Dr. Hines. Let's go to Lincoln for that question. On that question, uh, Sheila Jackson Lee, Congresswoman, and Congressman Green. Uh, Sheila Jackson Lee, from Queens, New York, Jamaican parentage, and so forth, a heavy supporter of the Black Lives Matter movement, seem to have put that aside, ignore all the sufferation of Afro-Guyanese out there in Guyana, 3,000 plus fired from their jobs, a lot of them being persecuted, those at GCOM, lots of things happening. But yet she embraced that man who once, when he held office during his term, hundreds of folks were slaughtered, drug lords were reigning helter-skelter all over the place, threatening U.S. ambassadors, their families. A U.S. ambassador was kidnapped. I mean, sorry, not an ambassador, regional security officer was kidnapped. All these sort of things. I don't know. Lincoln, take a bite at it, sir.
You know, what happens there is it's desperation, it's an opportunity for them to fight back. That's what they're looking for. That Sunday protest shook them. Well, let me go further to tell you. In 2017, I had a discussion with some colleagues, and they said to me that oil will determine the next government in this country. Everything that you've seen there, everything you see happening during the election is about oil and money and who controls it. What they're doing there with the Congresswoman is to really have the support to continue with their shenanigans, even if she don't support them or presence there, right? While whatever may have happened, may something outside of their governance would have influenced it. They will bring it here and tell you that what they have had is a vote of confidence in the management of this country and how they treat everybody. That's how the people will use it. And we need to definitely go back and do some work. David made a point. The opposition and others have to work. It's time to work on it. We have to intensify the program. But I am not afraid. While I'm concerned what is taking place in the society, I'll tell you, when the PPP came to power in 1992, they were in a very strong position. When they left in 2015, they were weakened. I want to tell you that they are as weak and vulnerable as they were in 2015. Because I'll tell you what, it is the thievery, the corruption, the buccaneerism, and all these things that put them in the opposition. And they came back. And it seems as if they have not learned. What they intend to do is to intensify the program. Buccaneerism, corruption, thievery, all the lands that you had coming from Molson Creek coming down. As you monitor what is taking place, they're giving them out to their friends and cronies. And the 10-acre or 20-acre that Sivans had not far from the dump on East Bank there at Peters Hall. he had to give up some of that land. In as much as the court said that the deals were legal, they're beating black people that they must give up what they mean is that black people must get nothing in this country. They must pauperize the tribe. They must be, as one said, they came here as beggars and what have you. Now they're kings, queens, and lords. You take it that their intention is to be the new massa. Their intention is to be the new massa. Their intention is to make sure that whatever is being done, or whatever the African people acquire in this country, they must only get it when they say they can get it. That's so
well said, Lincoln.
But I have
Lewis.
news for them.
We all got news for them. Lincoln himself has been a victim on the PPP there, death threats and car broken into, lots of different things. We all can talk about those things. It wasn't easy at all. Fortunately, we are alive to talk our stories about the PPP and the dictatorship and the victimization and the persecution and all these different things, including hundreds of death threats.
Mark, let me tell you.
Go ahead.
Let me tell you something, Mark.
Sure, sir.
I remember when they broke into my car, opened my car, and threw whatever inside. I called you, and at the end of it, we get the police. We still have some decent policemen, you know. They said, bring this car to the station. When I went in the station, one officer came to me. He said, don't leave your car here. Carry the car out for me. I said, well, he said, if you left the car here, you may hear they find something in this car here, or you come back and you can't find something that was on the car. He said, look here, your car driving, carry it out from here. You remember that night, Mark?
Oh, yeah.
And I drove the car out. You know, you still have some decent policemen.
I got to give you credit, though. Whatever they threw in that car because they broke your car up, whatever they threw in that car, I give you credit for having the stomach to drive it. It wasn't a good scent. It wasn't a good scent at all. Thank you, Lincoln, for being in that struggle. Thank you, Lincoln, for remaining there and still continuing in that struggle against an oppressive PPP regime, a dictatorship, a racist regime. And now there's nothing inciting about that. It is our opinion based on evidence, based on our personal experiences on the ground, even being targeted by the police force, some elements of the police force, and being locked up for 3 nights on frivolous charges and all these different things. So we would have gone through that. We have that personal experience. David Hines, the same thing over the years. So we are speaking from personal experiences that we have shared individually or with each other. Anytime something happens, we are there for each other, as we were there for Freddie Kissoon when he was being victimized by the PPP, when he was locked up. Well, of course, we shared about 3 nights at Brickdam. It was horrible 3 nights, apart from him crying all of the 3 nights. When he lost his job, when Glenn Lau kicked him out at the Kaitur News, it was us who he came to and who he came for us to rescue him and to negotiate for him and all these other things. But there are other things that we can talk, but I prefer not to talk at this point in time. But let us go back to Dr. David Hines as we're looking at the time. And thanks for telling us that during the days of Dr. Walter Rodney and so forth, that Freddie Kissoon was nowhere around.
Never
there, but he puts himself on the scene. Your closing remarks, Dr. David Hines.
Look, Mark, I think we have to intensify the struggle on all fronts, because we are facing life and death situation, life and death as far as the family is concerned, as far as our communities are concerned, as far as African Guyanese are concerned, as far as those people across race and ethnicity who oppose the PPP are concerned. We've got to organize. We've got to organize ourselves. We've got to mobilize all the human resources at our disposal. And then we've got to agitate because the PPP wants us to shut. They've done everything to shut us up. And they may have shut up some people. They may have driven fear into a large section of our support base. But we who have the opportunity and we have the privilege to use our voice and our minds to speak, we have got to do so. And we have got to work on eliminating fear among our people. If we were overtaken by fear, we would still be in physical chains on the plantation. We've got to beat fear. The way you beat fear is that you educate people first. And then you agitate them so that they can agitate for themselves. And finally, I'm making bold to say that wherever it is possible, wherever you are, whether you are on the streets, in your homes, or at your workplace, if you get the chance to undermine a government that is undermining you every day, undermine it. It is not for me to tell you how to undermine the government. You are there in the workplace. You are there in the villages. You are there in the towns. And this is a government that has undermined you politically, undermined you economically, undermine you psychologically, who think that you are second class and third class citizen. You have a right to undermine them, because the more you undermine them, the more you expose them. The more you expose them, the more fragile they become. The more fragile they become, you then get an opening to say to them, here I am, give me what belongs to me. They're going to come back at you. But as Jimmy Cliff says so eloquently, the harder they come, the harder they fall. This, no other time has the David and Goliath story been more true. All we have is ourselves. We have each other. We have Mark Benchcup Show. We have Politics 101. We have Rickford Burke. We have all Sheriff Duncan and all the other talk shows. Support them. Support your brothers and sisters in Guyana as you have been doing. Wake up every day and say 1 hour of my day is to agitate and witness for my people. Because there is no other time that your country needs you wherever you are. It has always been the burden of the black man to lift the world. When we lift ourselves out of enslavement, we lift the lid of enslavement, formal enslavement, forever. Nobody else could be enslaved. We are the conscience of the world. We are not superior, but we are the conscience of the world. And Guyana calls on us to cleanse it from this pestilence that has descended on it. I use strong words, not because I know words. I use strong words because strong words are needed. Now is not the time to be a coward. Now is not the time to be reasonable. Now is the time to disturb your neighbor, because your neighbor intends to take you back. To take you back to the backyard. It is Martin Carter say, I come from the nigger yard of yesterday to the world of tomorrow. I turn with my strength. You all got to strength. No, because it's needed. That's my word.
You know, well said, Dr. David Hines. Well said. And when you speak like this, the truth, and with so much passion, you know what the folks in the install regime love to say is that we don't have a right to speak our minds. We don't have a right to our opinions. We are inciting. We are racist. Look at them. But yet they are allowed to do and to say whatever they want to say every single day on fake media, on social media, in the newspapers that they control, in the radio station and television stations that they control. The only station that people can listen to the other side of the coin. And oftentimes it's the truth. And I say the only radio station on the ground, of course, there are other social media platforms, Politics 101, CAMS TV, APNU AFC TV page, and others. But 107.1 FM, persons can tune in on the ground to hear the other side of the coin. And that is what they're so afraid of, the other side of the coin. We must not be afraid to speak the truth, to exercise our constitutional rights. Before we go to Lincoln Lewis for his closing remarks, talking about incitement, look at what Irfan Ali and his folks did at the Pegasus. Look at what they did. Horrible, violent. Come on, we can go on and on. But listen to this before we allow Mr. Lincoln Lewis for his closing remarks.
Right across Ghana, when the ministers of Granger or Nagamutu come here after the 21st of March, you say to them, walk behind them, chase them out, they're going to be illegal. Say to them, you're illegal. Free up the country, you're undemocratic. They're going to face a different situation right across the country.
When they come to the communities, whether it is in Berbice or Essecubo and Linden or in South Georgetown or Agricola or in Ennore or Port Morant, the people of Guyana should treat them as illegal. I said they should walk behind them, chase them out of your communities because it means they've been squatting in power.
So they have the right to say, walk behind leaders, walk behind ministers, chase them out. And obviously it is quite clear that he's inciting violence there. But these are the people who are the last on this face of earth to talk about incitement, to talk about all sorts of racial comments and these sort. Hear that guy, hear Jack Jail, hear him. Lincoln, your closing remarks, my friend. Please, your closing remarks.
Let me say to you that the guys get a game, and this game, if you read it, is like they're playing cricket with a football. The ball big, and they I don't know. People get caught up in this thing. Every time they have a problem, what they will do, they will look for blackface to go there and do it. And in this case here, they're looking for the man who they put in there is Mark Phillips. Listen to him. And if they get Mark Phillips, they look for the most articulate black man to do it in his place. And why they do it is because Phillips, who's supposed to be the number 2, has accepted that he is number 3 in the constitution of this country. What manner man is this? What manner man is this? This man, as I said earlier, he held a similar position like Colin Powell. When Powell recognized that he was misled on the Iraq War, he went back and retraced his steps and accepted his error and see how we can correct it. This man here, you know how this guy behave? Is a pity, brother. Pity on that people like them. This country ain't going to go to war, you know. God forbid me. I don't know what will happen with Guyana. All of us would have gone. Imagine we are in the decade, in the last phases of the decade, the international decade for African people. A period when we need liberators and not our slaves. And these guys have constitutional position. And yet at the same time, they are getting their responsibility to society. And secondly, to the community that where they come from. We have to take them on. Let them understand that, let me say to them, these guys, you were not elected or placed in strategic places in the government because you're bright. But it's that the PPP want to put to the world that there's a high level of inclusivity. We are including Africans in the government. As such, the Africans has to look out for the communities that they come from. To do otherwise is to abrogate your result, is that you don't know what your role in the government is. You know, I'll tell you something. Just the same, you have the coalition. You know, Granger government never take Ramjatan and Nagamutu to do the things that the PPP taking the Prime Minister Phillips, Robson Bennett all to do to the African community. These guys got to learn, these people got to learn, they got to understand that they have a responsibility. Robson Bennett broken up the police force. We have to understand that your role is a role to, you're there to empower. When they carry Odinga in there, you know what they call Odinga? They say he's going to be the empowerment man for the African community. You know why they carry there? Because they recognize that you need a black man who will understand the problems and the plight of the African young people and so forth, communities. And he will come back and show them how they can do it. In this case here, what these guys are doing, these guys are not looking at what of empowering the African community. They are looking to see how they can subjugate the African community. When you talk about these issues, they say you're talking race. Yes, race is not, let me tell you something. It is good, as far as I'm concerned, I have a right to talk about race. As far as I'm concerned, I should not be carrying out any racist act of antagonizing, by antagonizing, and when I say a racist act, I must not go over there and antagonize another race. I must not go over there and say that, deny another race of what the national patrimony of this country is in participating in it. I should not do those things. But I have a right. If any government has conceptualized, developed, and is implementing a program that militates against the interests of the group that I come from, I have a right to stand up and defend it. I have a right to defend my group. To do otherwise is to abrogate my responsibility. Not merely as a citizen, but as a man of African man. Let me tell you this. I am an African first. I am a Guyanese second. And it comes about because of the history of my ancestors. They were brought here in chains. They were brought here in chains against their own will. And as such, I was born, they fought slavery. They fought indentureship. They fought colonialism. I was born here, not because of my will, or because my ancestors love it. They were brought here against their own will. And if I don't stand up, if they didn't stand up, I would have bound in slavery. And if I don't stand up, then I will contribute to those who are coming after me to return to serve them and finally be enslaved again. We have to fight. I don't care a damn one name or what label the PPP put on me. I believe that we will have to fight. And the only way they will put label on me is because it hurts when I speak, and I shall continue to speak. Before I close, let me remind Phillips, remind Robeson, remind Joe Hamilton, remind Todd, right? Waldron and who else? I will want to remind all of them. One thing I'll remind them, that they shall be held accountable by me, either on a platform like this, or I'll use my poison pen to deal with them. I will write all the time. We shall hold you guys accountable. You have to deliver for our community. You either deliver or we discredit you. Stop this nonsense, Phillips. You know, I am surprised, you know, I knew his father, you know, he was a man who never take nonsense. I thought he would have been of that ilk. Stand up and don't take nonsense. Gentlemen, the audience, my friends who have been working with me every day and listening to this program, I will ask you to see how we can all hold hands as we continue to crusade across this country, carrying the message to every nook, every cranny. We have to relieve ourselves from the bondage that the PPP may have us in. Good night, brothers and sisters. Good night, audience. Everybody.
Lincoln, thank you so much. Well said. Thank you so much, Dr. David Hines. Well said. Well done, gentlemen. We must not be afraid to speak the truth. We must not be afraid to stand up and represent those who are being oppressed, those who are being persecuted, victimized under this wicked, corrupt, racist PPP regime. We must not be afraid that they are sitting with some friends and talking about who is inciting and who is being racist. They are the ones who are inciting. They're the ones who are the racists. They're the ones who are practicing economic genocide. Once again, look at what is happening throughout the country. Look at who are the folks who are getting all the deals, whether foreign deals or local deals. Look at the folks in the private sector commission who are getting all these hundreds of millions of dollars of a write-off, debt write-off, and concessions and all these different things. Just take a look and you'll understand. Take a look also as to who are the dog food vendors. Take a look as who they put to clean trenches and drains and do gutter works and all these different things. Look, and you will understand. And maybe one day we'll be able to sit with Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and the other Congress women and men and let them, those who don't understand what is happening in Guyana, especially this sort of victimizations against persons of African descent, they have to hear the truth. They will hear the truth. We have to ensure that we counter the lies that Jack Dale and his crew and his cohorts, they go and they sit down and they lie upon lies upon lies. And so I want Congresswoman Jackson Lee and others to know that they should meet with us also, so we can give them, because we belong to an oil-rich nation. We also want to talk with them to give them the other side of the coin. And I'll say this finally. those U.S. law enforcement officers who met with Anil Nandalal. And Anil Nandalal has used it to gain political points by threatening persons who have opposing views. Those law enforcement officers should apologize. They should come out publicly and say that they were used for political propaganda by Anil Nandalal, because no U.S. law enforcement officer is going to sit and threaten persons residing in the U.S. and enjoying their constitutional rights, something Anil and his folks are not allowing the Guyanese people to do. They are persecuting, they're victimizing, and they are practicing racial politics along with genocide. What is it? Economic genocide. Thank you, gentlemen, so much. But before you go, I want you to watch this with me as to how Jack Day was out inciting people, inciting his supporters. Listen to it before we go, Jack.
Right across Ghana, when the ministers of Granger or Nagamutu come here after the 21st of March, you say to them, walk behind them, chase them out, they're going to be illegal. Say to them, you're illegal. Free up the country, you're undemocratic. They're going to face a different situation right across the country.
Well, you heard, they are going to face a different situation right across the country. He has that right to say that. But like, we don't have the right to say that they are going to face a different situation right across the country. It is like we don't have that right to say it. Only Jack Deere, only he and his ilks and his ancestors and all of them have that right to say it. But black folks, when we say those things and we speak our minds, we are racist, we are inciting violence, all sorts of things we're doing. We are troublemakers, all sorts of things they've branded us. You know, they run out of brands, they run out of adjectives for us. But you know what? It is the same us during the coalition term in office. They loved, yeah, Lincoln. Yeah, me like how you criticize the government constructively, mind you. Yeah, Lincoln, me like that. They weren't calling you racist then. They weren't calling David Hines racist then. They weren't calling me a racist then. They loved us. They loved us. But now, for them, we are racist. Gentlemen, thank you, troublemakers. Thank you, two troublemakers. Good trouble. Good trouble. Continue the good work. I salute you guys for what you do. Continue to be brave. God bless you, and God bless all of our listeners tonight. Be back tomorrow, same place, same time. So long. Tata.
It's hard to be at peace with the ones who are so discard. It's hard. Them have a knife in your back and them smile it so broad. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd are shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. I never want to take your glory, Lord. Send your angels to encamp around about me and stand guard. To envy is so easy and to love it is so hard. Let me work for your glory and not for the award. Don't make me ever get caught up in the scream and the applause and go talk about the blessing and not talk about the Lord. All these things are vanity. I need your reward. Let me be real. Don't put on no facade. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me to deal with the fans them give me flesh when the crowd are shout. Oh, yeah. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. Oh, God, the booby traps with them set is real. Sticks and stones can break my bones and words can harm me. They can harm me. When the evil come against me, you'll protect me. You'll protect me. Father, I need the strength of your son, cause you know my work is not done. Lord, I need that endurance just to finish this race that I run. Help me to deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. And help me to deal with the fans them kill me flesh battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. You tell me if you stand firm, cause every little plan you have a confirm. I know them evil plan turn. In a darkness, me a the long term. So help me if we deal with the ones that who said them love me when them really don't. Jesus, help me if we deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd a shout. Help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Help me on the battlefield. God, the booby traps with them set is real. Help me if we deal with the ones them who said them love me when them really don't. Help me if we deal with the fans them kill me flesh when the crowd a shout. Jesus, help me on the battlefield. Jesus, help me on the battlefield.